June 29th, 2025. Before the sun came up, 6 Russian warships quietly moved through dark waters toward Ukraine. These boats carried deadly cargo, more than 380 trained fighters, 24 heavy war machines, and huge amounts of weapons. Their goal was simple: sneak behind Ukraine's southern guards and catch them off guard. Russian leaders thought no one could see them coming. No spy cameras in space had found them. No tracking systems had noticed their movement. Everything was planned down to the smallest detail. To Moscow's top commanders, this was a flawless secret mission. Invisible forces crossing dangerous waters under black skies. But they were wrong. Ukrainian commanders had prepared a trap that would destroy this Russian attack completely. What followed next proves that in war, nothing is certain until the final moment arrives. Let me tell you this incredible story. At exactly 3:14 in the morning, when darkness covered everything, the Black Sea lay still until suddenly it wasn't. 6 Russian military boats, specially built for secret water landings, pushed through the waves, moving west from captured Crimea. Inside these vessels sat over 330 Russian fighters, 24 BTR-82A heavy vehicles, and mountains of artillery rounds and bullets. They were heading toward a muddy bay 120 kilometers east of Maliv. Russian spies had carefully chosen this spot because tracking systems couldn't see it clearly. Above them, no satellites watched. No flying robots buzzed nearby. No radio messages gave them away. From where the Russian leader sat, this looked like perfect timing. Quiet, invisible, and ready to cause massive damage. Their plan was to build a fighting base before daylight and move north with armored support by 6,000 am. Moscow had put everything on this risky bet, but high above, in thin air, 6,000 meters over the sea, something watched in complete silence: an unmarked flying robot. A changed Ukrainian PD-2 spy drone hung motionless between layers of warm and cold air. Its heat-sensing cameras mapped warm spots with perfect accuracy. Just 2 months before, engineers had improved it with better communication systems and a special coating to hide from detection. At 3:15 am, it found them: 6 hot spots moving close together, showing heat patterns that matched diesel engines and people inside. The drone didn't attack. It didn't even move. It just sent information. Every 10 seconds, the robot sent coded bursts of data, video clips, and heat pictures to Ukraine's main war room in Kiev. Each image became clearer than the one before. The information packets had timestamps, location marks, and were double-checked by ground-based tracking systems. The invasion had been spotted not by space cameras or tracking devices, but by a $30,000 flying robot hiding in open view. Russia had no idea. They still believed their secret plan was working perfectly, but now Ukraine had the gift of time, and in war, timing kills more effectively than raw power. No fighting had started yet, but the battlefield had already changed, and the hunters were about to become the hunted. If you had to decide, would you attack right away or wait for the perfect killing ground? Share your thoughts in the comments and watch as a Ukrainian general makes exactly the right choice. At 3:16 am, just 1 minute after the first drone message, a secret alarm went off inside a protected military command center under Kiev. The coded video feed from the PD-2 robot went straight to a war table where Ukraine's best generals, spy officers, and drone battle experts sat. Nobody said anything for 10 seconds. Then General Anatoly Vashenko, leader of the Southern Fighting Group, leaned closer with his eyes glued to the screen. The Russian boats were exactly where he worried they would be, inside the weakest part of the southern shoreline. If they made it to land, Ukrainian frontline troops in Mykolaiv would be trapped within hours. "Hold fire," Vashenko said quietly. "Not now." The room looked at him with shock. He pointed to a small valley near the river mouth, a natural sound-blocking area surrounded by hill ridges. "They won't hear missiles coming if we hit them there. We wait 7 minutes." That's all he needed. During that time, target information was sent to 3 Borovai rocket systems hidden 22 miles inland. At the same moment, a ram to attack drone was prepared at a nearby forward airfield. 2 Neptune-guided missiles, modified for hitting ships, were loaded into mobile launchers parked under hiding nets. No expensive fighter jets, no big artillery guns, just a few carefully chosen weapons picked for stealth, speed, and devastating accuracy. The strategy was basic: wait for Russia to enter the death zone, then wipe them out. By 3:23 am, everything was ready. Russia, still trusting their perfect secret mission, kept moving west. Ukraine had drawn a line, not on paper but in time. Please help us by hitting like and subscribe. The real destruction is about to start. Don't look away. At 4:42 am, the Russian group entered the chosen killing area, a bay surrounded by high banks and soft swampland, perfect for soaking up tracking signals, but also a natural sound trap. Inside this quiet zone, engine noise echoed inward, but nothing from outside could be heard. Not knowing they were being watched, the 6 Russian boats kept their tight formation, each ship spaced exactly 40 meters apart to prevent crashes. They were run 120 kilometers from their landing spot, but now just 17 seconds from destruction. At 4:42:13, a single order was sent from the Ukrainian war room: execute. The first attack came from land. 3 Borovai rocket launchers hidden in a wheat field fired a complete round of 80mm tuned rockets built for area attacks. Each rocket carried a high explosive braking warhead able to tear through armor and burn troops in the open. The rockets curved upward, then screamed down onto the water in a tight pattern. 4 seconds later, the second wave hit. A Ram 2 suicide drone, a converted LEA-100 robot, dove from 5,000 feet at a 70-degree angle. Its 4-kilogram double-charge warhead punched straight through the control room of the front boat before exploding, causing chain explosions from weapons stored inside. The shock waves rocked the other ships, but it wasn't finished. From 60 kilometers away, 2 R-360 Neptune-guided missiles raced in low over the waves, flying just 15 feet above water level to avoid detection. Using terrain-matching navigation and active seeking heads, they locked onto the heat signals from the boat engines. 1 missile hit dead center on the command ship. The second struck a vessel carrying fuel supplies, creating a fireball that lit up the entire bay like daytime. In less than 150 seconds, the sea was boiling with fire, smoke, and screaming. Russian soldiers jumped into the freezing water only to be swallowed by metal pieces, waves, or fuel-fed flames. The attack was over almost as fast as it began. The outcome: all 6 boats destroyed, all 24 armored vehicles lost, over 320 Russian troops either dead or missing. Only 4 survivors were later found, burned, confused, and barely conscious. What made this attack historic wasn't just the size of destruction, it was how efficient it was. Ukraine had used no fighter planes, no satellites, and no billion-dollar systems, just a drone, some rockets, smart thinking, and perfect timing. What hurts more than losing? Being too scared to admit it. Russia uses silence to hide lasting shame. By 4:47 am, the Black Sea was calm again, at least to space cameras. 6 boats had disappeared under the surface. Oil fires crackled across the water, burned pieces floated like grave markers, and hundreds of Russian soldiers were nowhere to be found. But in Moscow, there was no announcement, no TV statement, no admission of the loss. The Russian Defense Ministry stayed quiet. Its evening briefing mentioned nothing about the water landing group. Russian state TV focused on unrelated naval training in the Arctic, even as dozens of independent tracking accounts showed complete signal loss from the landing fleet since 3:30 am. Behind closed doors, panic had started. At GRU headquarters in Moscow, internal messages labeled the operation as probably discovered. A leaked intercepted phone call shared by anti-Kremlin groups recorded an FSB agent saying, "The convoy is gone. We don't even have flight recorders. It's like they were waiting for us." The Kremlin's worst nightmare had come true. A total tactical failure exposed not by NATO satellites or advanced spying, but by a cheap Ukrainian drone and smart battlefield patience. Numbers gathered by Western experts were crushing: over $120 million in Russian equipment lost in under 3 minutes. The Southern Command lost a mechanized unit critical for the Mykolaiv offensive, a 48-hour delay in Russia's push north due to supply line breakdown. Ukrainian officials, meanwhile, made no attempt to hide the strike. At noon, General Voshenko appeared briefly before cameras, saying simply, "When invaders come by sea, they should expect to drown." The world listened. Pentagon experts praised the operation as a textbook example of low-cost blocking warfare. European media called it the Bay of Blindness. But what truly shook Russian military thinkers wasn't the firepower, it was the spy breakthrough. Their so-called radar blind spot had been figured out, not blocked. Ukraine hadn't jammed it, they had learned to see through it. The PD-2 drone's use of heat layering and hovering altitude had beaten Russian counter-spy programs. This meant any future landing attempt using that route was now suicide. And worse, the soldiers' bodies couldn't be brought back. Families would get no coffins, only silence. It wasn't just a tactical defeat, it was a mental breakdown. And for the Kremlin, silence was no longer protection, it was admission of guilt. In a war defined by billion-dollar weapons and satellite-guided accuracy, a modified drone costing less than a new pickup truck had just changed the rules. The PD-2 spy drone used in the Black Sea operation was worth only $30,000. It didn't fire a missile, it wasn't fast, it didn't even carry a weapon, but its value was in what it saw and how quickly it reported. Every 10 seconds, it delivered live heat imaging, GPS locations, and movement tracking straight to the Ukrainian command bunker. While Russian commanders relied on false confidence and assumed blind zones, Ukraine relied on real-time information and patience. That patience, multiplied by accuracy, became deadly. "Don't shoot until you can end it," General Voshenko would later tell young officers at a military school. "You don't need to scare the enemy, you need to remove them." And that's exactly what Ukraine did. The operation used 3 Burovai rocket launchers, not high-end artillery, but older systems improved with grid targeting. A Ram-2 loitering drone made from a modified spy platform with a 4-kilogram double charge. 2 R-360 Neptune missiles, originally designed to hit warships, changed for exact strikes on slow-moving watercraft. None of these systems were revolutionary alone, but combined under the right timing and intelligence, they became devastatingly effective. This wasn't just a victory, it was a statement that Ukraine could deliver crippling damage without needing foreign fighter jets or top-tier assets. The cost of the entire ambush, rockets, drones and missiles included, was estimated at under $2 million. Meanwhile, Russia lost over $120 million, dozens of armored vehicles, and more than 300 elite soldiers in under 3 minutes. Perhaps more importantly, Ukraine didn't just protect territory, they changed perception. NATO experts began citing the attack in briefings as a case study in uneven warfare. In the US, retired Admiral James Grady remarked, "It's not about how loud your gun is, it's about when you pull the trigger and who's watching the target before you do." The sea was quiet again, but the message was loud. This war would not be won by brute force, it would be won by vision, speed, and the kind of thinking that turns $30,000 into a strategic earthquake. In a war often measured by the weight of tanks, the cost of missiles, or the number of divisions on a map, Ukraine's ambush on the Black Sea proved something far more disturbing to its enemies. This is no longer a war of strength, but a war of brains. A $30,000 drone, silent, unarmed and unseen, triggered a chain of decisions that wiped out an entire Russian water landing force in under 3 minutes. There were no flashy fighter jets, no area bombing, just timing, intelligence, and accuracy. The Ukrainian military didn't need overwhelming firepower, they needed only the clarity to wait and the wisdom to strike at the perfect second. Russia lost over $120 million in equipment, 24 armored vehicles, and hundreds of soldiers, not in a long battle, but in a surgical execution. The sea became their grave, and the silence from the Kremlin spoke louder than any headline. For Ukraine, this wasn't just a victory, it was a turning point. A moment that showed their commanders could outthink a larger army, that courage and cleverness could overcome steel and numbers. And for the world watching, especially those of us who remember the Cold War, who've seen decades of global conflict, this moment should echo loudly because it asks a question no general can ignore. What happens when intelligence becomes more dangerous than firepower? What would America do in the same situation? Would we wait? Would we strike? or would we hesitate like Russia did? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story gripped you, if you believe in the power of strategy over brute force, consider subscribing. Your support helps us bring these real stories of modern warfare to light. This wasn't just a battle, it was a warning, and somewhere